Hi, today I'm here with Cassandra Karnick. She's a Dimension marketer with a rich B2B SaaS background. And she's the marketing and brand manager at Conversite.ai. Cassandra, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So anybody that had to kind of build a marketing organization from the ground up now know that it's not easy, and also you're never done learning. So I think anybody that is in this position will really enjoy your talk today. So Cassandra, you've built a marketing organization from the ground up. I'd love to have your insight on how to approach this and how to keep evolving your marketing strategy over time.
Absolutely. And I think, the cool thing about this specific topic is it's so applicable to everyone, whether they're building a new a marketing strategy from the ground up, or they're just needing to pivot. As you mentioned, marketing is a constantly changing thing. You're constantly having to go back to the drawing board. So I think I can structure this around three key building points. If you think of, building a house, you need to lay that foundation. And there are three blocks that I think are really critical for that. The first one is researching your competitive landscape. I can't, tell you how long I spent at the very beginning of my role at Conversite, just researching and reading, trying to get a hold on, the competitors that we're lining up against. Defining those competitors, who are they? What similar products are out there that are being used by our audience, and what makes our product unique from theirs? So to do that, you always constantly have to keep a pulse on your competitors, emerging players, and acquisitions. That's a huge piece in the SaaS world. And that will, constantly inform you about how you should pivot your strategy, tweak it, or when it's time to launch a new campaign. The next thing I think is to identify your personas within those competitors. So really looking at who these people are at the very core of who they are. And that's really going to come into play when you're advertising, when you're building your messaging. And that's just another key component of that research that you need to do. Mm-hmm. The second building block, I think, would be to define your position. So within your market, what hill are you going to plant your flag on? You have to own your hill. So to do that, you don't want to be too broad and encroach on other people's hill. You want to have your own hill to yourself, and you want to plant that flag firmly on that hill. If you're too narrow, you're probably missing out on other opportunity, and it's not scalable. So to do that, you want to look back at your product for what it is. What are the features specifically to that product that are unique for your product? And then what are the advantages to your customer of those features? What pain points are those features addressing? And then benefits. What at the end of the day is your product doing for that customer for the long haul? And what's going to make that customer stay with you? So to do that, to claim your hill, to plant your flag on it, you have to double down. And I know for Conversite, we double down on a specific vertical or a specific industry. And we became really focused and specialized in that vertical and industry. And now what we're doing a year later is, how do we become the best in that vertical? Because you really have to establish yourself as the best in that hill before you can look at the next hill. And that is just a vertical jump. The third building block is brand identity. In marketing, we're constantly talking about brand. People have their own brand, companies have their own brand. And especially for a startup, it is so critical to establish that brand early on. Research shows that it takes 0.05 seconds for someone to form an opinion about your company based just on your website. So that's not a lot of time to prove who you are and to prove your value, especially when you're a new player. So, no matter what kind of business you're marketing for, every business needs a steady, very unique identity that everyone can identify with to boost brand identity, boost recognition, and to essentially build that story behind your brand. That story, no matter what you're selling, is also very critical, because everything you build in the company should be drawn back to that story. Everything from, the actual appearance of your logo or your website, the buyer journey, the way that your sales team is selling that product, it should all kind of be tied in to the same story for that consistency.
Right. Well, Cassandra, thank you. I think this was a really structured answer. So thank you for this. And I think what's really interesting is that you go from like really understanding your market to decided where you are to actually building your brand. And as you said, right, 0.5 seconds is nothing. So you really need to like master the 2 first steps to make sure that the 3rd step is going to be appropriate so that you can leverage this very little time that you have to convince your prospect that you're worth their attention, you're worth their time.
Absolutely. And, now a lot of what you're doing is solely digital. We've lost a lot of that one-to-one contact, that human touch. So a lot of marketers like myself have had to go back to the drawing board and figure out ways to, have your business and your messaging still resonate to your buyers, but on a completely digital basis.
Right, exactly. All right. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.